Welcome back to my channel. Today we will learn about the most dramatic and intense storyline that has captivated audiences and left fans on the edge of their seats. The CBS soap opera The Bold and the Beautiful has always been known for delivering compelling narratives with romance, betrayal, and unexpected twists. However, the recent developments involving Sheila, Deacon Sharp, Hope Logan, and Detective Baker have reached levels of intensity that will keep viewers glued to their screens for weeks to come. The marriage that couldn't survive. The marriage between Sheila and Deacon Sharp had been a tumultuous relationship from the beginning. Despite their attempts to make things work and start fresh, the relationship was ultimately doomed to fail. What began as a union filled with hope and possibilities gradually deteriorated as the couple faced mounting pressures and conflicting desires for their futures. Deacon, who has always been a character searching for redemption and genuine love, found himself torn between his commitment to Sheila and his growing emotional connection to someone else entirely. The deterioration of their marriage was not a sudden event, but rather a slow-burning process that gradually wore away at the foundation of their relationship. Both Sheila and Deacon brought their own baggage, their own demons, and their own expectations into the marriage. What they didn't bring, however, was the ability to truly compromise and work through their deep-seated issues. The marriage ultimately became another casualty in the long list of failed relationships that have plagued both characters throughout their lengthy histories on the show. Deacon's new love interest. As the marriage crumbled, Deacon found himself increasingly drawn to Taylor Hayes, a character who has maintained her presence on the show and represents a completely different chapter in his life. Taylor offered Deacon something that Sheila could not provide: stability, genuine affection without the chaos, and a path toward a healthier future. This romantic development was not something that happened overnight, but rather unfolded gradually as Deacon spent more time with Taylor and less time trying to salvage his failing marriage. The shift in Deacon's affections become more apparent with each passing episode. He began to see Taylor not just as a friend, but as someone with whom he could build something meaningful and lasting. Taylor, for her part, seemed to offer Deacon the emotional support and understanding that he had been desperately seeking. This connection between Deacon and Taylor represented hope for Deacon's character development and suggested that he might finally be on the path to genuine happiness and transformation. Hope's support and Sheila's fury. Hope Logan, the daughter of Brooke Logan and Deacon Sharp, took an active interest in her father's personal life. She recognized that her father's marriage to Sheila was toxic and unhealthy, and she actively supported Deacon's decision to end the relationship and pursue a romantic connection with Taylor instead. Hope's support was significant because it provided Deacon with the confidence and validation he needed to move forward with his decision, knowing his daughter approved of his choice. However, Hope's involvement in Deacon's personal life and her open support for his separation from Sheila came with serious consequences. Sheila, who was already volatile and unstable, became absolutely furious when she realized that not only had Deacon chosen to leave her, but he had also done so with the encouragement and approval of Hope Logan. In Sheila's twisted mind, Hope had interfered in her marriage and had turned Deacon against her. This perceived betrayal sent Sheila spiraling into a dangerous state of rage and obsession. Sheila's anger was not the kind that would fade with time or be soothed by words of comfort. Instead, her fury festered and grew with each passing day, consuming her thoughts and driving her toward increasingly dark and dangerous actions. The combination of her rejection, her loss of control over Deacon, and what she perceived as Hope's interference created a perfect storm of rage that would ultimately lead to tragedy. The dark path to revenge. Consumed by her rage and desperate desire for revenge, Sheila made the most shocking and devastating decision of her life. She decided that the only way to make Hope pay for her supposed interference would be to eliminate her entirely. This was not merely an idle threat or a moment of heated anger that would pass. This was a calculated decision made by a woman whose mental stability had completely deteriorated and who was now willing to commit murder to satisfy her thirst for vengeance. Sheila's plan was set in motion with careful deliberation. She would attack Hope, and she would make sure that this attack would be fatal. The idea consumed her every waking moment as she obsessed over how she would execute her revenge. Every interaction with others became secondary to her singular focus, making Hope Logan suffer the ultimate consequence for daring to support Deacon's separation and for standing in the way of Sheila's quest for happiness and control. The darkness that had always lurked beneath Sheila's surface finally erupted in its most violent and terrible form. This was the moment where Sheila would cross a line that could never be uncrossed, committing an act so heinous that it would fundamentally alter the lives of everyone in her orbit and send shockwaves through the entire community of the show. The tragic event unfolds. The attack on Hope Logan was sudden, brutal, and executed with a ferocity that left no doubt about Sheila's deadly intent. Sheila confronted Hope with murderous rage, and in the struggle that ensued, Sheila carried out her vengeful plan. Hope, who had been completely unaware of just how dangerous Sheila had become, found herself facing a life-or-death situation with no time to properly defend herself. As Hope fought for her life, she may have realized the true depth of Sheila's madness and the severity of her miscalculation in underestimating her father Sen's ex-wife. But in the end, Sheila's determination and rage proved too much to overcome. Hope Logan, a beloved character and a symbol of the younger generation on The Bold and the Beautiful, was killed at the hands of Sheila Los Angeles. The act was swift, decisive, and absolutely irreversible. The aftermath of this tragic event sent shockwaves through the entire show. Hope's death would not go unnoticed, and her loss would be felt deeply by her family members and everyone who had come to care about her throughout her time on the series. The repercussions of this single act of violence would influence storylines and character relationships for episodes and episodes to come, touching everyone from Brooke Logan to Deacon Sharp and beyond. Detective Baker's investigation. Detective Baker, the police official responsible for investigating crimes in the community, immediately launched a thorough investigation into Hope's death. It was clear from the beginning that this was not a simple accident or a death from natural causes. The evidence pointed to foul play, and Baker was determined to get to the bottom of what had happened and bring the perpetrator to justice. Baker conducted interviews, examined the crime scene with meticulous attention to detail, and worked diligently to piece together the events that had led to Hope's tragic demise. The detective's professional expertise and commitment to justice were evident in every aspect of the investigation. Baker understood the gravity of the situation and the importance of conducting a thorough and comprehensive investigation that would stand up to scrutiny. However, Detective Baker's investigation faced a significant obstacle, one that would ultimately prove to be insurmountable in the pursuit of justice for Hope Logan. Despite his best efforts and his commitment to solving the case, Baker would find that crucial evidence had disappeared. The leads that should have been there, the clues that should have pointed him toward the truth, and the proof that should have secured a conviction against Sheila were nowhere to be found. The evidence disappears. Sheila, demonstrating intelligence and foresight that belied her emotional instability, had carefully eliminated every piece of evidence that could connect her to Hope's death. She understood that in order to escape justice, she would need to erase her involvement completely and leave no trace of herself at the scene or in any connection to the crime. Sheila methodically removed every piece of physical evidence that might link her to the murder. Whether it was blood, clothing, weapons, or any other tangible proof of her presence at the scene or her involvement in Hope's death, Sheila made sure it was destroyed. She may have washed away traces, hidden or disposed of the murder weapon, changed her clothes to remove any blood evidence, and taken every precaution to ensure that forensic analysis would yield no results. Beyond the physical evidence, Sheila also understood the importance of motive and opportunity. She may have fabricated alibis for herself, manipulated circumstances to suggest her innocence, or even attempted to redirect suspicion toward other individuals. Her criminal intelligence and her experience with evading law enforcement over the years made her a formidable opponent for Detective Baker. The destruction and removal of evidence represented Sheila's complete dedication to escaping accountability for her actions. It showed that she was willing to go to any lengths, commit any act, and take any measure necessary to avoid prison and punishment for what she had done. The evidence that should have been Detective Baker's key to solving the case and bringing Sheila to justice simply did not exist anymore. A case going cold. As Detective Baker continued his investigation without crucial evidence, the case began to take on an increasingly frustrating character. Leads that should have gone somewhere instead ended in dead ends. Witnesses whose testimony might have been crucial were unavailable, or their accounts were unclear and contradictory. The detective's instincts may have told him that Sheila was responsible, but instinct alone is not enough to secure a conviction in a court of law. Without physical evidence, without a clear motive that could be proven in court, and without witnesses who could place Sheila at the scene of the crime, Detective Baker's investigation stalled. The case that should have been solvable became increasingly murky and unclear. Every avenue that Baker pursued seemed to lead nowhere, and every witness he interviewed seemed to know nothing useful about what had happened. The frustration of being unable to solve a case that seemed so obvious in many ways weighed heavily on Detective Baker. Here was a character who had dedicated his career to pursuing justice, only to find himself thwarted by the cunning and intelligence of a killer who had anticipated the investigative process and had methodically removed every obstacle to her escape. The implications for the future. The failure to solve Hope's murder and the apparent escape of justice for Sheila raises troubling questions about what will happen next in the storyline. Sheila has successfully evaded detection and prosecution for one of the most heinous crimes imaginable. Having tasted success in her plan and having escaped the immediate threat of arrest, what will prevent Sheila from committing further acts of violence? Moreover, the presence of a murderer walking free among the other characters represents a constant threat. The members of Sheila's community are now in danger of becoming victims to her volatile emotional state and her demonstrated willingness to kill anyone who stands in her way or earns her ire. No one is truly safe as long as Sheila roams free without fear of prosecution. For Detective Baker, the failure of his investigation represents a professional setback and a personal frustration. He knows that justice has not been served, and he may harbor ongoing suspicions about Sheila's guilt even without the evidence to prove it. The detective may continue his investigation in the background, hoping that additional evidence will eventually surface, or that Sheila will make a mistake that will provide the breakthrough that the case so desperately needs. The storyline involving Sheila, Deacon, Sharp, Hope, Logan, and Detective Baker represents some of the most dramatic and intense moments in the recent history of The Bold and the Beautiful. The marriage breakdown, the romantic complications, the vengeful murder, and the subsequent investigation all combine to create a narrative that keeps viewers engaged and desperate to know what will happen. The tragedy of Hope's death, the cunning of Sheila's cover-up, and the frustration of a detective unable to secure justice despite his best efforts all contribute to a compelling and emotionally resonant storyline that showcases why The Bold and the Beautiful continues to captivate audiences year after year. As the show moves forward, viewers will be eagerly awaiting the moment when justice finally prevails and when the truth about what really happened to Hope Logan finally comes to light. Thank you for joining me as we explored this intense and dramatic storyline. If you enjoyed this analysis and want to stay updated on the latest developments from The Bold and the Beautiful, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new content. I'll be back with more exciting